moved here. We closed on our house June 30th and moved in July 16th. I'm very happy about the move, but I miss Pittsburgh terribly. Well, I had a whole life there, friends. Um, in many ways, it's a much more integrated city culturally in that you have to do things in Pittsburgh. Here, people go to Boston or New York for a lot of things, as you would expect. So while Pittsburgh and Hartford share a similar population, Hartford does not have a ballet. They do not have any opera company that at all compares with any of the opera companies that Pittsburgh has. They have the Hartford Symphony, but it's not a world-class symphony. It's a fine symphony. It's just it doesn't compete.
Sure.
I mean, here people would go to the Boston Symphony or the New York Philharmonic. In terms of cities outside of New York, I would say that Pittsburgh and Cleveland have the two premier regional symphonies. And then other cities like Atlanta have very good symphony.
Right.
St. Louis, of course, Minneapolis. There are others as well. Well, of course, you used to have Robert Shaw and the Robert Shaw Chorale, which was among the great chorales of the world. That's a distressing thing, especially the Jonas Kaufmann situation. Of course, the very horrible one with Dmitry Varsovsky is a medical related one, but Jonas Kaufmann's is one of, it could be his own making, by taking on too much or too heavy repertoire or singing in too many big houses. Of course, European houses are way smaller than the Met. And the Met is the shining, it's like the National Opera of the United States. Right. And he canceled the last two seasons, and he's been canceling a lot. I know he had a further operation on his vocal cords, or at least that's what we're told. And so that is distressing because he's still in his most vital years. And someone who I totally admire, Anna Netrebko, she has really a voice from the heavens. There are times when I think that the fact that she's taken on so much heavy repertoire that it weighs on the lower part of her voice unattractively at times, not at all times, but there are times. And of course, I'm not always in the house when I'm hearing her. I'm hearing her through a broadcast, so it's really not fair. She always had and still has a glorious top, but by adding the weightier roles, the bottom has gotten thicker in not the best way. She has a huge voice. It's an enormous voice because she sings effortlessly at the Met. At least to me, it seems effortlessly. I mean, you don't see her going, oh, or like screaming out to be heard, where there are some singers you can feel that they are on what we say all cylinders.
Right.
They're really chugging it out. And she doesn't seem to have to do that.
Right.
It's a big voice. The same thing with Jonas Kaufmann. He didn't seem to have to churn it that much. But on the other hand, he sings so ardently and fervently that I don't know how much his voice can really handle. Also, he seems to sing every other day or every third day. That's a lot for a singer. And he takes on new roles. I mean, he's singing concerts and operas, and I don't blame him. The life of a singer, the professional life of a singer, has a narrow range. It's not like an executive in a company. Like an athlete, you have a limited time, or a ballerina. It's all a matter of physical durability. Right. Such as Nathalie Dessay, who now is more in musical theater, because before she was, of course, a great star in opera. I would say another thing that is interesting is that it is still the debate, and the length is still going on, of Placido Domingo's endless career. And, I have to take both sides. On the one hand, you got to give him credit. he gets up there, he does a pretty good job. And on the other hand, it's time to say goodbye. But I understand from his perspective, he loves it so much. He can't give it up. And why would he when people are willing to pay him these enormous fees to sing in the new baritone repertoire that he's developed? So if I were he, perhaps I would make the same choices. I don't know. But his fans adore him. It doesn't matter. Whereas if you look back in history, Bastianini, who, as you may, he was a great baritone in the 50s. Well, many people would say he was the greatest baritone ever, and they would have a very good case for it. He developed some kind of cancer. It might have been throat cancer. And it was recommended that he have an operation, but that would have meant the end of his career. So he did not do it. So he continued singing, and his voice started deteriorating. But as he was sort of like Lou Gehrig, never canceled a performance or whatever, he just kept going on, and slowly his voice started deteriorating to the point where, unfortunately, his last performance at the Met, he was literally booed off the stage because his voice was in such terrible shape. But as you know, you are contracted long in advance to sing. Even back then, you were contracted long in advance, and that was a shame. Of course, none of us live his life, but that was a very sad end. You should listen. You should go on YouTube and look him up, Bastianini, and listen to his great recordings. It's one of those buzzy baritones with just tremendous presence. I did not like it at all. Meryl Streep did not sing awful enough. She actually sang better than Florence Foster Jenkins sang. And it's sort of an awful subject. The story of a woman who was very wealthy, papered the house at Carnegie Hall so she could have herself sing. I don't think it's really a worthy topic, but that's just my opinion. I loved Hugh Grant in it. And Meryl Streep is sort of a goddess in film. She can do no wrong. But I just really didn't care for the movie. And she did the singing. It's really amazing. I mean, and she did a very good job of playing a bad diva, but she wasn't bad enough. So the whole movie was sort of just didn't do anything for me. Well, I remember when Twiggy did The Boyfriend, and she was wonderful in it. And even with her name, it was not a box office hit. But the people who saw it, such as me, liked it very much. I think a lot of this is going to have to do with the fact that the studio is so financially invested in it and is going to promote it so heavily that I do think it will have an audience. Also, its two stars are very appealing to young people. For instance, they picked two people I had no idea that they had any talent, and maybe they don't, in singing and dancing. So they didn't go the typical route to find like the new young Audra McDonald or Hugh Jackman or Neil Patrick Harris. There are so many. So I have no idea how they do, although I did see in the trailer that it's sort of it looks a little bit like a Busby Berkeley production. Fanciful, and I mean, for instance, in the Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers movies, the story didn't matter. You were dazzled by the dancing and the music, and those movies were in black and white. And of course, Fred Astaire, there never was, and there never will be another Fred Astaire. And his dancing in the early movies, which were all in black and white, were just fabulous. And then later he moved on into color, as he had a very long dancing career. So elegant. And he pulled it off. When he would be in his character and he'd start to sing, it didn't jar you. I have no idea how this is going to play out, because musicals are very out of favor in the movies. My Fair Lady, and even, heaven forbid, please, nobody kill me after I say this, The Sound of Music, it's kind of drecky. But of course they were huge hits, whereas if you go back just a little further beforehand, think about Carousel, Oklahoma, South Pacific, The King and I. Those were really, really great. Now, I was not a big fan of Bye Bye Birdie. There were a lot of others, but you see, as we talk about decades, we can mention many, many popular musicals. And I mean, I didn't see it, but I know there was a filmed version of Les Mis. There was a filmed version of the movie that Mel Brooks did, the musical, The Producers. I saw it. I couldn't even get through it. I saw Annie, horrible. I would say Funny Girl wasn't bad, you know, in my opinion, because it had Barbara Streisand. But it is not a popular art form at all. Well, today we have videos which feed the attention span of the young people. 3 minutes. Okay, maybe some of them are extended 5, 6 minutes. That's all they can do. And whereas my generation, am I going to sit and watch Beyonce? No. I think she's very talented. Hey, listen, if I could come back as Beyonce, I wouldn't complain. She has a great life. Same thing with Lady Gaga, Madonna, all of them. They all they are hardworking women who deserve their fame. It wasn't handed to them on a silver platter. You asked me about big themes that have come up in opera, and here's one, because you mentioned George Chakiris wearing makeup to make him look darker, and that's the whole issue of black singers or white singers taking on black roles. Because last year, the Met opened up with Othello, that was last season, where we had a white singer and he did not have any black makeup. And this has become a huge topic as to who can play whom on stage. We're supposed to be colorblind. So, for instance, Madama Butterfly is rarely played by an Asian. And, of course, in Othello, there's that great dialogue where she, Desdemona, compares her skin with his. So could we have had Leontine Price and James McCracken, without some makeup, where she's pointing and saying, how our skin colors are so different. So the leap of faith in theater, is it just endless? For instance, when we see a musical and it takes place, God knows wherever, and there are of course black choristers, and we know that there are no black people in that time and place. We just have to, whatever. The same thing in ballet. Now that we have people of color in the corps de ballet, all those ballets like Giselle. I mean, of course, there's no reason why the entire corps de ballet can't be black, but we've all been used to seeing all those little willies as white girls. I know this is all politically incorrect, but it's just something worth thinking about. It's so complicated. There's no right or wrong answer. But I do think that for the sake of art in general, that we must be colorblind. We just must be. That's how it is. Be colorblind. On the other side, can you imagine a white cast for Porgy and Bess? Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Not going to work. So we have sort of double standards, don't we? It's complicated. I want it to go away. Just go away. Because I can't fix it, neither can you. Nobody can fix this. It's just reality that we have in schools today. We have fabulously talented people from all over the world, and they all want to be in everything, and they should be. They should not be prevented from having a career because of the color of their skin or where they come from. But in certain cases, like Porgy and Bess, I think you have to there are some instances where the line is drawn. It just is drawn. As soon as you go into the theater, you have to suspend, because first of all, in opera, people don't speak in song, and we don't listen to conversations in foreign languages with a symphony orchestra playing behind them. Yeah. So as soon as you enter the theater, I think anything is possible. I know how I feel when I'm in the audience for a stirring performance. To me, I'm lifted out of my chair. I'm sort of like suspended someplace.
Hmm.
It's like high. It's really like I've never taken drugs, but I would imagine that that's what a drug high would feel like, or like a runner's high.
Hmm.
It's just so thrilling. I mean, I've been brought to tears more times than I have fingers and toes, and I could borrow many other people's as well. Where at the end of a great performance, even for the bows, I cry for the bows because it's a great outpouring from the audience to acknowledge.
I
It's their
agree.
only way. I mean, they can't go up and say you were fabulous. The only way they can clap is loud, bravo, brava, hoot, tear up their programs, throw them on the stage, whatever it is they want to do. Well, speaking about things that are sort of, let's just say, cliched, Stu and I went to see William Tell at the Met. And of course, it starts with the great overture. So, two things I want to comment on. One was after the slow part, it starts very slowly, and then there's dawn, and then comes the fast dun, 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 dun. When the part that's fast came on, there was like a buzz in the audience, like, "Oh, it's this piece." Like, hello, what planet have you been living on for the last 50 years? So that was interesting. But the other thing is that as much as we've heard the William Tell Overture, when you hear it played by an orchestra as first class as the Met Orchestra, it was a different experience. The ensemble work for the was so precise, and the conducting was so tight that it was just really maybe the highlight of the opera. I mean, there were other highlights as well, but it was just thrilling. And here's something else that happened that night that I've never seen before. At the end of the performance, the musicians threw flowers at Fabio Luisi because it was his last time conducting until 2020. Now, I remember the first time I heard the oratorio, The Messiah. I was 9 years old. And because I sang in it later, I know what note it is. When the sopranos sing at the end of the Amen, the high A, tears rolled down my face. I was only 9. But I just had never heard anything so beautiful as
Hmm.
that. And I then later sang in it. And every time I sang in it, I would well up. Eventually, I didn't well up. Eventually, the chills went away. It's just, how many times can you hear it and be moved by it? Tchaikovsky is one of my favorite composers. I say that about almost every composer. But because we're talking about him, he's one of my favorite composers. And I'm not embarrassed to say that um, because on an intellectual basis, he's left off a lot of great composer lists. And the reason is, to me, he just paints Russia with his compositional style, especially in Eugene Onegin. I mean, you feel Mother Russia there. You feel the earth that those people stood on in the beginning where the women sing. It's just, I mean, it transports you to another time and another place. I mean, that's not New Jersey. And it's not France either.
Hmm.
It's Russia. And that's what I love about Tchaikovsky. There are also so many great Tchaikovsky songs. I don't sing. I never sang them except for the horrible translation, Nur wer die Sehnsucht kennt, which is translated loosely into English, None But the Lonely Heart,
Right.
which has a very famous tune. But there are so many great Tchaikovsky songs. There are a bunch of great pieces for the piano. I mean, he's really a wonderful composer. Plus, I would say in the last maybe not even 50 years, many of his other operas have gained stature in the operatic world. Last year, the Met did Iolanta, or 2 years ago, I think it was. It was either last year or 2 years ago. They did the premiere at the Met of Iolanta, and it's a beautiful score. And then, of course, we've had the Queen of Spades around, and of course, as I mentioned, Eugene Onegin, but there are so many others. Mazeppa, not, I really don't know at all. I've heard, a little bit of it. Yeah. Well, I'm not so sure that it's the change in audience or that it's the same audience and they're just getting older. But you don't really see young people. Yesterday, I went to the HD production of L'Amour de Loin. And the theater, I would say that there was maybe me and maybe 5 other people in my age category. And that's a wide swath. And then the rest of the theater was between their mid-70s to their mid-90s. And there were about 200 people in the theater. That's pretty depressing. 2 groups came in groups. One was from a home, and one was a group of opera lovers that go together. What was interesting is that when I went to the ladies' room, I overheard one of the women from the group that came from the home. The people had actually taken a vote whether or not to leave, because half the people did not like the opera and wanted to go home, and the other people definitely wanted to stay. But the vote was pretty much split down the middle, so they stayed, which was pretty brave of them, because it's not a work that you would think would appeal to older people. I was glad that half of them really liked it. Maybe they didn't like it, maybe they just liked being out. But that is a sad thing. You would think that young people would have flocked to this. It's something that only a theater like the Met could produce, with its vast resources and stage, and with the ability to, when you charge, for instance, like when a little theater here in Connecticut charges $40 a ticket, well, there are only 300 seats. That's hardly any money. But when the Met audience, when they put it on, they have a potential 4,000 seats to sell tickets to. Now, not exactly, because some are always given away. There are always complimentary tickets. But let's just say 3,900. They have the potential to sell 3,900 tickets at a wide variety of prices. They can garner a lot of money. And so therefore, at the Met, it's actually a bargain to see a show like this. Let's just say the average cost of a really good seat at L'Amour de Loin was $300. Well, Hamilton's $1,000. I mean, now I haven't seen Hamilton. I shouldn't say that you can't compare them, but I'm going to say it anyway. And so, but people just aren't going. That it's just, in fact, when I looked out at the audience at the Met HD Theater for the Met, many, many empty seats. Now that won't happen with Lucia or Traviata, but this is a modern work. But you would think that would be the work that would get young people out. Come on. Yeah. Well, look, there's no music in school. There's no music education. So how can we expect audiences to not even grow, but sustain what we have when there's no path from being a member of society to being a member of the audience? How do you get there? By what road are you going to find yourself, even at your local opera company? You don't have to go to the Met. Right. It makes me really sad, because I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime, but I do think that it will happen, that opera will be very rare. Classical symphonies will be even rarer.